So my name is Sarra I'm from Seattle, but I'm based in Phoenix right now, working on my PhD in sustainability. I'm an organizer with Black Lives Matter Phoenix, and also working on climate justice and prison industrial complex. And so we talk about these terms: capitalism, the prison industrial complex, climate change. There are a lot of large concepts that I could get all heady and academic about, but I'm not going to do that, because I think that for us to really take something with you, it's about stories. And stories are a lot more personable, so I'm going to tell you a story about my family. My mom was a biracial foster kid when it was illegal to have interracial marriages. My father was a climate refugee from Ethiopia. So they both came from nothing, and my mom really lived the American dream. She worked really hard, was born into welfare, got a nursing degree, and was able to make it to middle class. But her trauma from being abused as a foster child interrupted her life, and when that happened, she lost everything. In the first year, she lost her job. In the second year, she lost her house. In the third year, she lost her nursing license. And by the fourth year, they had spent their retirement. It took 4 years to lose everything she had worked for in 40 years. And see, that's the problem with this capitalist system. We don't have no nets to catch people. And so unless you come from intergenerational wealth, which we know as black folks and as immigrants, we don't have that privilege to have intergenerational wealth. You can lose it just like that. And so that's really, for me, more than anything else that I've done, really taught me about how vicious this capitalist system is. Because of her medical bills, she racked up over $200,000 in debt, including over $16,000 in ambulance fees alone. And on disability and Social Security, which is what my parents were on, they could no longer afford to live in America. So they went back to the motherland, and I wish I could tell you it was happily ever after from there. But because they weren't able to deal with their debt and couldn't afford to claim bankruptcy, they became economic refugees and could no longer come back to America without the threat of being arrested. And they didn't stop there. They went after their kids' account, and at one point I lost access to my bank account for over a month, and I almost lost my housing because of that. And it was a paralegal who gave me one word to say. She told me what they were doing by freezing my account when they were going after my parents' account and not giving me my information. It was an FDCPA violation. I cannot still tell you what that exactly means, but I can tell you when I went to the law firm that had frozen my bank account, all I said after weeks of being on phones with them, all I said was FDCPA, and I got a hold of their boss and my account was unfrozen. I did not need a lawyer, I just needed the knowledge. And I tell you this story to highlight the power of the law and the legal system, and how this access to knowledge can kill or save lives. So my first request of the lawyers in the room is to ask, how are you making this life-saving knowledge accessible to the community? Regardless of the type of law, whatever type of law you practice, you can save lives. And you can make that knowledge accessible, whether it's through workshops or YouTube or hand sheets, defining terms. All of these things are things that communities don't have to. All of these things are things that can save lives. And most importantly is offering your services pro bono. And I want to give you an experience that just happened last Thursday. I was out as part of Black Lives Matter Phoenix. We were protesting in Tempe, which is outside of Phoenix. They shot a 14-year-old boy whose parents are undocumented in the back as he ran away. They murdered him, and they were covering up the investigation. When we went to protest, they brutally and violently attacked us, arresting 4 of my comrades and charging them with things as high as felonies. And I can say the reason that I was able to make it to this conference today, the reason that I didn't have to stay outside of the jail for 2 days, was because one of our friends who was a lawyer, who did not know about the protests, was called at 11 o'clock at night and showed up at the jail. And that is why my friend, who has been falsely accused at 20 years old with a felony, was able to get out of jail with no bail because of the services that she was able to offer at the drop of the hat. And this is the type of solidarity that we need to see from lawyers. And then when we talk about things like climate change, oftentimes we can feel immobilized. There's this huge issue, but there's many local solutions that we can do. We know that on the planet level we're not addressing it, but what can we do on the local? We can push for things like high-speed mass transit and transit-oriented development. But we know that high-speed mass transit and transit-oriented development, like the light rail and the development around it, around the country, has caused gentrification. So how do we push for things like high-speed mass transit and transit-oriented development in a just way? There are things you can do. For example, with the light rail, some of the things that we have pushed for in Seattle and are continuing to push for in Phoenix is things like holding the property taxes down. When the light rail in Seattle opened up in North Seattle, it started in South Seattle, but years later when it opened in North Seattle, my sister who lives in South Seattle's property taxes went up by over $1,000, just like that. People on fixed incomes were immediately pushed out. So there's things that you can do. Holding property taxes, giving grants to small businesses during development, and mandatory affordable housing. But what does affordable mean? This is another thing that we need to unpack. Now, I'll give Seattle as an example again. The area median income of Seattle is now $109,000. So right now, they are building for a percentage of the area median income. So the affordable housing they're building is for the affordable housing is $50,000. This is if you make $50,000, then you'll qualify for the affordable housing. Well, in the Chinatown International District, the community's area median income is $30,000. So you can see that there's a huge disparity between the city area median income and the community area median income. And this is how it is everywhere. And we know that in East Portland, it's not going to be the same area median income as North Portland. So we need to make sure that when we look at affordable housing, we're making sure that we're looking at the median income of the actual community, not of the entire city. There's also things like local jobs that can be created, green jobs that can be created, and Seattle's another example of this. They created a green job local initiative where they created trainings for energy efficiency, and energy efficiency is actually more important than renewable energy. We need energy efficiency before we have renewable energy, because right now we're using too much energy. When you have energy efficiency, you can reduce energy consumption by up to 50 to 75% of the energy we're consuming now. So we need to reduce the energy before we create more renewable energy, because renewable energy still uses precious metals. So we need to make sure that we're using the least amount of energy possible, and we know that jobs around energy efficiency, there's jobs that can be trained at community colleges, and there's things you can do. For example, what Seattle did was they did a local hire where they only hired in the zip code of South Seattle, making sure that they hired communities of color, but without naming it, because in Washington State, affirmative action is illegal, but they were able to get around that by targeting the zip code. There are many other things you can do, like divesting your institution, but this gets complicated because when you divest your money out of the fossil fuel industry, right now, as someone who's worked on divestment campaigns for over 5 years, I have found that once you take your money out, there's no good place to put it in. Oftentimes, for example, one of the most sustainable, the largest sustainable fund is the MSCI. All of this includes fossil fuel, except for the Spider X fund, which actually includes overcompensates for the lack of fossil fuel with healthcare, the big pharma, and the big banks. Is that what we want to invest in? No. And so we need to think about how we can take the money out of Wall Street and be able to put it back into the communities, whether that means investing in local businesses, investing in real estate when it doesn't look like gentrification. There are many things we can do, even looking at cryptocurrency. And that's what I'll leave y'all with.